Dead Cells, a game that everyone's talking about on the indie front, has sold 4 times better on the Switch than any other system. But what does that mean for the Switch's future?
Hot take! According to Destructoid, the game Dead Cells on Nintendo Switch has outsold the PS4 version by 4 times as much.
That's a big deal because the PlayStation 4 is the dominant platform on the market right now, having sold just about
4 times as many consoles as the Nintendo Switch has sold.
Yeah, just about. The numbers are going to vary a little bit, but just hear us out, because there is a really interesting thing that's going on here.
Yeah.
Now, I've played Dead Cells.
Yes.
I really liked it. I've only played a small amount of it, but it's got amazing graphics, smooth gameplay.
Yes.
And the idea that you can take that game and play it on the go, anywhere you go with a Switch, makes the Switch version, in my mind, a little bit more valuable when you're getting basically the same experience across the board.
Dead Cells is a game that has many roguelike sort of attributes to it, and it's one of those games where it's like, okay, I want another run, It's great for that sort of, play it a little bit, maybe you die, you set your console into sleep mode. So yeah, it's very great for the Switch console itself. So we're seeing a lot of indie games selling quite well on the Switch. This is the conversation that we wanted to have. We've seen a couple of Nindy Directs, one during Gamescom, then one shortly thereafter. We started thinking about whether or not the Switch is going to become the indie console, and we're starting to see numbers more and more that are pointing to that being a thing.
Now, this is an exciting thing because, look, folks, if you've watched me ever talk about the Switch at any point in the past, you know that I've been a little bit worried about the system's future, simply because we didn't know enough about third-party support, and the announcements we've gotten for third-party support have been very minimal at best.
So we began talking earlier today about whether or not third-party support could be as vital to the Switch if the indie sales are as fantastic as they are today.
This is just a theory.
Yeah.
But the idea that we're playing with right now is the concept that what if third-party support on the Switch is gone? We're not seeing big party companies like Rockstar or any of those companies release games on there right now.
I mean, we are still seeing some things from Bethesda. It's not to say that there isn't third-party support, but I think most people will agree that there's less third-party support there than there are on the other guys.
It's minimal at best, okay? Like, if the Switch kept going this way and we didn't see the indie support, it would be a very dangerous system moving forward because you just I don't think it would grow. But with the growth of indie gamers out there and indie game development, there's a lot to be said about this. Now, first off, there's a lot of benefits to indie games. One, indie games generally are made with smaller budgets, and usually with smaller budgets, they make restrictive gameplay decisions. Now, restrictive gameplay decisions are not something, I think I'm coining this term now. I'm literally talking about when you're developing a game, you're developing a game within your budget. And within your budget usually means you can't have huge 3D models that are designed by a team of people. You can't have expansive 3D worlds. You are a lot less likely to see a game like Grand Theft Auto come out from an indie front than you are something like Dead Cells.
Well, we got Retro City Rampage.
That's true. Right? Retro City Rampage is a 2D example. 2D. Exactly. So they tried to make it, and they made it smaller. And now this is the idea moving forward that we're trying to say about this. So working within your budget, making smaller games and making games that are just a lot less visually impactful. They can still look beautiful, but it's just...
Dead Cells looks freaking amazing.
It really does. But Dead Cells does incorporate kind of like a pixelated look to an extent and stuff like that, and they can blend things. Now, this isn't to say that the art style and the effort that's put into these games is bad.
Because we can even point to some 3D games like Oceanhorn that look fantastic,
yes. Right? And there are those examples. Oceanhorn's on the Switch. So these
doing
games...
well, too.
Yeah. These games are made with lower ideas in mind specifically, and I'm going to just ballpark this out here, but I think this is what happens when a game developer, especially an indie one, is looking at making a game. They specifically want it to work on every platform they can. So they make the games initially with an idea of just performing underneath what the main system would possibly be. My thought process was that every game developer out there would be focusing on the PlayStation 4 as their primary system because there's more out there. But if they start to see more sales on the Switch, that's going to reverse the tides. Game developers are going to start focusing on the Switch as the primary, and the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One and even PC would be secondary to that.
I could very much see that happening because some of the information that I looked into with indie developers has kind of pointed to like the success of some of these games that have been out for a long time has been like overwhelming on the Switch. So Team Meat tweeted out earlier, I believe it was this year, that Super Meat Boy on Switch, the first day sales were comparable to the first day sales on the 360, like way back in the day.
Yes.
That's exciting.
It really is.
other developers as well. SteamWorld Dig 2, when it came out, it didn't come out on the same days on Steam and on the Switch, but it was like a day apart. And the sales on the Switch were huge. Were huge compared to on Steam. Enter the Gungeon sold really well. Darkest Dungeon did as well. So, okay, seeing big numbers, but one thing got me thinking. Like, these are games that have a caliber to them. These are games that already have some infamy to them for their quality, or people love to play these games. I'm still a little worried about the little guy, right? So we had heard earlier, we actually reported on this, that Cosmic Star Heroine, the developers had some issues because their game, they felt, was not recognized by Nintendo, and it didn't do as well on the Switch. It still sold reasonably well.
Yeah. But they didn't get as much as they were hoping.
So what do you think? What do you think about all this?
This is a really great example. Now, when we say that Super Meat Boy has sold very well, congratulations, you are actually basically putting patting Microsoft on the back for that one, because Microsoft helped push that game out to an obscene degree during their original run on the 360 of indie games.
Right.
Many of these games we're seeing come to the Switch have already released on other platforms, although there are new ones that are coming out. I've personally seen there are games coming to the Switch's indie store that are bad. I've played them already. I'm not going to name specific names, but they are bad games, and they were not good on the platform they originally came out on, and I would be shocked to know if they actually sold more on the Switch. If they did, that's also a bad thing, because that kind of furthers the idea that there's bad games on the Switch, which I don't think needs to be, shared about.
There's bad games everywhere.
Exactly. Now, with this in mind, there is this big thing where you had all these games that were popular somewhere else, or Sony and Microsoft put marketing muscle behind them to kind of make them as popular as they were, and then another platform got them. So if Nintendo is reaping the benefits of indie game stuff, I have no doubt in my mind the reason why they're doing these in indie directs is because they had the forethought to think, okay, look, the moment we start to benefit from these games that were available on other platforms or being marketed by other platforms, the other guys are probably going to stop supporting that as much, right? Sony, Microsoft, they are trying their best. They're probably going to keep expanding and growing their audiences as they want. I don't think they're going to stop it anytime soon. But the amount of time and effort they put into marketing these things might drop back a bit, especially if Nintendo was benefiting from it.
Well, if Nintendo's benefiting from it, or if Nintendo's like pushing their own sort of advertising bucks behind them, those games are already being pushed onto an audience, right?
Exactly.
So,
I mean, Super Meat Boy is a great example of that, because for the longest time, Super Meat Boy was a 360 game. That's how everybody played it. That's how all my friends played it.
Right. I mean, the original game wasn't Super Meat Boy, but that was like a Flash game. Newgrounds?
Newgrounds originally, So there is that team there that have been working on the games like that for a while, and they've made a whole bunch of games. But realistically, right, there is that idea that other companies were helping marketing these games. Now, I don't reward Nintendo for the success of an indie game that they didn't themselves, fund or market or anything like that. So that doesn't really do much for me in that regard.
But there are games coming on the platform that are doing really well that haven't been supported by other companies, right? Like Dead Cells, for example.
Dead Cells is a great example.
SteamWorld Dig 2.
Exactly.
Those titles tend to be very Nintendo-centric.
Exactly. So what I think is going to happen, though, is that because I believe indie developers are willing to take a little bit of money to help push their stuff forward, I think you're going to start to see kind of an indie game war between Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo, where they start going in and going, okay, we want 2 years exclusive on this game, we're going to give you a chunk of money. And indie developers who don't have a lot of money to begin with might be like, oh my god, $20,000 or whatever. It could be literally that little. That just gives them enough to just go, okay, that covers my cost for the business, that covers cost for licensing. You can do a lot with that. And I think Microsoft and Sony, who I think are more aggressive on this front, I don't know if Nintendo will do this, are literally going to be going out and taking these...
They're going to push?
Oh, I think they're going to push hard. Now that they've seen Nintendo's getting the success there, they don't want that to happen to Nintendo, because Nintendo has the benefit of being a portable system on top of everything else.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting strategic tactic. If the other guys are seeing, hey, there's not so much third-party support over there, maybe they'll try to tug away at the one thing that could be like a support for the Switch with that lack of AAA games.
Coming into 2019 and 2020, we're likely going to be seeing newer releases of PlayStation 5 and Xbox 2 or whatever they're going to call those systems. Once that happens, the initial systems are going to lower significantly in price. Once those systems lower in price, they're going to be direct competitions against the Switch in terms of games that people want to play a lot. Now, the big party games that people really want to play, like the new Red Dead Redemption 2, that's only available on 2 platforms. It's not available on PC. So the dominant way to play that is either on Xbox One X or PlayStation 4 Pro. And we don't know which system is going to be better, but my money's on the more powerful of the two, and that's going to be Xbox One X. So there's an idea out there that in order for them to keep things moving forward, indie games will have kind of a kickback to exist on a platform specifically for an amount of time. So I can imagine that Nintendo knows that this is a big deal and they need to invest their own money into this.
Well, I believe that's why we're seeing so many of these directs recently. I believe that they do see how well that these indies do, and it is like it keeps the heart of Nintendo beating very well. People are very excited to have these games on the go, which is something that the other platforms will not be able to offer in this console iteration.
Now, what I want to say here is going to be super controversial.
What's that?
All right? I think that Microsoft, Sony, or Nintendo, whoever does this first is going to benefit greatly.
Don't give away your secrets.
Well, here's the thing. I sometimes like to suggest things that I think would be really cool and beneficial for the industry. This one is kind of weird. I think Nintendo, Microsoft, or Sony should buy one big building. I don't care where the building is. Put it in like a tech quarter, somewhere where a lot of game developers happen to reside. That building will basically, what they will do is they'll purchase the rights to a bunch of indie game developers and put them all in under one roof, sharing ideas, sharing concepts, working together, and making games together as a whole.
The Game Jam building.
The Game Jam building. And the idea would be that any of the games that come out from that platform, or from that space, exist on that one platform, and they get rewarded financially for it and stuff like that. You're going to have a couple that come out that don't work so well. You're going to have a couple games that might not work that well. You're going to have a couple developers who are going to be like, I can't work with people. I got to go on my own.
I mean, there would be a process of like weaning out the kind of fluff and keeping filtering in the really great ideas.
Absolutely.
And there's developers that have already proven their merit as well out there, little guys.
The idea is that these indie developers have been working on their own for so long in far less with very small budgets. And if they had a budget to work together, if they had those kind of principles, they would be able to produce a lot more games out there a lot quicker. Now, the reason why we don't see larger companies do this, like EA and stuff like that, is because they're focused on making larger budget games that pull in a lot more money per individual title.
Right, yeah, and then games as a service, that seems to be what everyone's concentrating on right now, avoiding or ignoring what indie development's doing right now. We're in a renaissance, like a golden age of indie development as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
Seeing some great titles, and a lot of titles are very, very successful, making a lot of money.
If we're seeing Nintendo Switch get super successful from indie games right now and selling more indie games than a lot of other larger third-party games and stuff like that, then the idea here is that those companies should be focusing on making some kind of corporation, some kind of organization that's making smaller, faster games at a much quicker pace and making those exclusive to the platform.
Even if it's not a building in of itself, there should be a push, kind of like what Xbox used to do with the 360, to have some sort of program that it's not a building per se, a physical building, but it is a program that reaches out.
Yeah, it could just be a philosophy, right? Like
exactly.
It's a camp of all these people that work together.
A part of me feels a little bit like Nintendo's going in that direction with these Nindies. Could Nindies become more than just a category and become some sort of helpful guiding service for
look how much success they're
developers.
having. You know, they're having so much success. This is an easy idea for them to achieve, and all these companies have the money to do something like this. And I really feel that the way that it would work best for them is the concept of, look, we have large third-party games coming out constantly, sometimes exclusive to our platform, sometimes not. But now we can get consistent exclusive games coming out on our platform, because the future is what you have to compete against. released. So the Switch has to compete against emerging cell phones. The Switch has to compete against other platforms.
The next console iteration, they have to have that in mind as well.
Exactly, because if the Switch falls too back on performance when it comes to certain game designs, they start to need to have games that are just made specifically for that system. Yeah. And as far as I'm concerned, there are game companies out there that are making indie games utilizing platforms and engines like Unity, and Unity basically has built-in technology to help break it off and to work on multiple systems all at once.
Yes.
It's not that easy. It's not just a switch you flick and it works.
No, but it's so much easier than it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
So these indie game developers, even if they see just a small amount of money coming from somewhere else, they're more likely to buy it. But I think that because these games are spread out amongst multiple platforms, the idea that one platform couldn't be selling that much is a little bit negative. Because I think that Dead Cells, had it only existed on the Switch, would have sold more on the Switch alone had it only been on that one platform. So Nintendo and companies like that want those specific releases could see more money coming out of that one game on one platform with a key, precise marketing tactic, a whole bunch of things going on.
If they push money in the direction of independent developers and grab those games, even if it's just a timed exclusive, or it could be really, really good for the system.
I'm not saying I specifically want this to happen. I'm just saying that if there's any company out there like Microsoft, Sony, or Nintendo, you're watching this and you never thought about what I just said, do it, because the amount of games you'd be getting on your platform that are exclusive, you could probably do it twice a month. Like really, if you had enough of these developers in a single location, it would be crazy. You would be getting things that would keep the system going no matter what, and you're putting in such a small investment on it.
As is, we're seeing, what, 20 to 30, or they want 20 to 30 indie games coming to the Switch every week. Right? And a lot of those are older, but there's a lot of new stuff there too.
See, all that needs to happen for another company to see success in this is they need to offer a more beneficial package, whether it's the games are cheaper, something else, whatever it is. If they offer something that is more of a benefit than the Switch, and they do that quick, then the Switch doesn't become the indie darling that it's quickly becoming.
But if Nintendo jumps on it with the same fervor that you're given to the other consoles, then they'll reap the benefits, right?
So folks, what do you think? Do you believe that Nintendo Switch has an indie future and a primary indie future, or do you believe that it can kind of live in a hybrid state where it's supporting some third-party games and indie games as well?
Final word before we finish. Hyper Light Drifter's out today, and it's on the Switch. Pick it up, support them. Amazing game. I'm done.
Brand deals.
Comments below.
We didn't get brand deals. Yeah. Share your comments with us below the video.